With the latest round of seabed search suspended after a fairly minuscule amount of progress, there's a lot of frustration right now about the search for MH370. A lot of people just can't believe that in this day and age, countries like the United States and Australia, which have some of the most advanced technology in the world available to them, can't find a 200-foot long airplane with 239 people aboard. One of the most frequent comments I get on the blog is, I can't believe that the government doesn't know where the plane is. Or put another way, the government isn't telling us the whole truth. Well, over the years, I've talked to a fair number of people inside the official investigation, and I think that I have a pretty well-grounded understanding of their mindset. And I will say that while there isn't a grand cover-up going on, there are definitely things that the government, whether that means Malaysia, Australia, or the United States, isn't telling us. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about what those things are and why they matter. I'm also going to talk about how I think we can solve the mystery once and for all in 2026 for real. That's all coming up right now. Hi, everybody. Jeff Wise back with you for another episode of Finding MH370, the only podcast that goes deep into the technical evidence with the help of some of the world's leading experts in a wide variety of scientific disciplines in order to solve aviation's greatest mystery. As I was saying earlier, I'm consistently getting comments like this one, which is posted on February 18th by Richard Morley 1140, who wrote, "If it really crashed in the southern Indian Ocean, do you have any idea why the Australian and US military radar and satellites have not helped to locate it? Why would they do nothing and leave it up to Ocean Infinity and questionable data from Inmarsat? Something is odd about all this, which makes no sense." Earlier, viewer NYFIFC _ wrote, "It's not ever going to be found. That's the way the captain and the governments want it to be." On January 25th, Cash5195 commented, "Military radar know where the plane is." So let's start by talking about whether one of those governments has known all along where the plane is because they saw it on radar or for whatever reason. The short answer is that I think they do. They do think they know where the plane went, and they're absolutely 100% convinced that the pilot hijacked the plane and that it flew south and that the math tells them where it went. But they didn't see it go somewhere exactly on a secret radar or something, because if it did, they would have found it by now. They would have tracked where it went and they would have picked it up. They would have recovered it from the seabed. In other words, what I'm trying to say is they want to find the plane. It being missing does them no favors. It has been an embarrassing and expensive and time-consuming effort to hunt for that plane. Australia is a democracy. It has spent a lot of its taxpayers' money for no result, which has not made its taxpayers happy. Both off the record and on the record, officials have said that they think they know where it went, and they're frustrated and baffled that they can't find it. But there are things that they know that they aren't telling us. And today I'm going to tell you about three of those things and why they matter. Let's start with number 3. The French barnacles. Okay, when the first piece of debris came ashore on La Réunion in the Western Indian Ocean in July of 2015, it was thickly covered in these marine fouling organisms called Lepus anatifera, or goose barnacles. These are the single most important physical clue ever collected in the case of MH370, because the chemical composition of their shells provides a record of the water temperature that these animals experienced. So you could use it to work backwards to determine where the plane went into the water. But the French never shared the largest barnacle shells, the ones that would have had the most information about that path through the ocean. Why not? We don't know. And this question has been asked. We just don't know. And why haven't they allowed other researchers to access the whole collection of shells that they recovered? They've been very secretive, disappointingly. Okay, number 2, Zahari's flight sim data. I was the first mainstream journalist to reveal that investigators had found a record on Zahari's flight simulator hard drive that showed that he had made a practice flight that in some ways eerily resembled the path that the plane was believed to have taken on March 8th, 2014. Some of the details of that data was published in the Malaysian final report, but no complete set of data has ever been published, and no one has ever delved into it and given a complete and satisfying explanation of the data and what it means. And in particular, one particularly baffling, or I would say intriguing aspect of this data is that it showed that the computer connected to the internet a week after the plane and Zahari on it disappeared. Why? Why did that happen? Okay, number 1, the number 1 data that I would most like to have, and which remains bafflingly elusive for reasons I don't understand, is the final set of radar pings that the Malaysian military recorded at 1822 Universal Time. All that the Malaysians have officially released is the primary radar returns that ended at 1802, 20 minutes earlier. So apparently the plane went dark at 1802, having passed over a Malaysian Air Force base, and then proceeded beyond it. It passed out of radar range and then reappeared at 1822. Why? Where exactly was it? For how long was it seen? What direction was it heading in? At what altitude? My suspicion is that if we knew the answer to those questions, we would have a significantly better understanding of what happened next, which is a crucial phase of the mystery. Which way did it turn? Because that last radar return occurred just 3 minutes before the first Inmarsat ping. And it could give us a strong indication of which way the plane was turning. And let me give you a little sub note here to this radar data. While we're at it, I'd love to get a statement from India about which of its air defense radars was on at the time, if any, and whether or not they saw anything. Okay, so those are the things that I would like to know, that I'm frustrated that the governments haven't released. I feel a little annoyed. But admittedly, knowing them would not automatically mean that we could solve the case, and not knowing them doesn't mean that it's hopeless. The fact is that information itself isn't what's making this case hard to solve. We have a lot of information, actually. We almost have too much information. What's a bigger problem is a failure to talk about it, to process it in a productive way, and a failure to fully grasp the full range of possible explanations. Let me try to put it in this way. I'm going to tell you a sort of capsule version of the mystery. At 1:21 a.m. on the morning of March 8th, 2014, the captain of Malaysian Airlines 777, flying over the South China Sea, called air traffic controller on the radio and said, "Good night, Malaysia 370. About 1 minute later, the plane went electronically dark, vanished from radar, and pulled a 180-degree turn. An hour later, somewhere over the Andaman Sea, the plane's satellite communication system flicked back to life and began sending mysterious signals recorded by the Inmarsat Corporation. Scientists were later able to decipher those signals to determine where in the ocean the plane must have crashed. They were the only clues to the plane's fate until 15 months later, when pieces of the plane began to wash up in the Western Indian Ocean. From this small amount of clues, investigators believe that they understood what had happened to the plane. Their belief was premised on three unshakable convictions. Number one, that the plane could only have been flown from the cockpit. Two, that the Inmarsat data could not plausibly have been altered. And three, that the debris must have floated from the airplane's crash site. Taken together, these three ideas form an impregnable, interlocking fortress of certainty. If even one of them turns out to be wrong, the truth of the other two would be enough to ensure that the outcome is the same. And even if two of them turned out to be wrong, the one that remained would be enough to prove that the plane could only have flown into the southern Indian Ocean. This is why the officials and the well-informed experts amongst the public who have worked to understand what I would call the mainstream take on MH370, this is why they feel so much confidence that it could only be in the southern Indian Ocean, because of these three pillars that uphold their understanding of the case. But here's the thing. If it's possible that all three of those certainties could actually be wrong, then the whole mystery gets turned on its head. This is a really hard idea for people to get their head around. Speaking of comments, I'm constantly getting comments to the effect of, Occam's razor, simple explanations are the best. That kind of far-off thinking is just way too complicated, way too arcane. Who needs it? Here's a real comment that someone wrote on February 12th. A viewer named Catalora wrote, "We know a pilot was in command when it went off course. So if it wasn't Zahari, then it was co-pilot Hamid. While of course this is possible, nothing points to him in any way like it does with Zahari." We know, Catalora says. This is a fact, an unassailable fact. That is the belief. But what if it isn't? What if there's another possibility? We're coming up on the 12th anniversary, and to mark the occasion, I'm going to spend the next 3 episodes going into great detail about each of these 3 certainties and explaining why they might not be so certain after all. There might be a way out of this kind of conceptual trap that we find ourselves in, unable to find the plane and unable to think of any other explanation. Taken together, something that the authorities have dismissed out of hand might not only be possible, but in fact the actual thing that did occur. For now, I'll leave it at that, but do stay tuned, because I think that what I'm going to lay on you will rock your world. If you want to stay on top of when the episodes drop, please visit findingmh370.com, or you can sign up for a free newsletter that goes out with every new episode. You can also leave your comments, questions, suggestions, expressions of outrage, if you like, or leave them here at the YouTube channel. I'm really looking forward to it. For now, this is Jeff Wise signing off. I'll see you next time.